Hi, my name is Tracy Stanton, and my company is The Flow of Love. I help ignite love in the lives of my clients so that their lives and their relationships work well. And I believe in love as a force of ignition, a force of transformation. And I believe that we have the opportunity to overcome our wounds and patterning and experience deep and lasting love in a relationship, in an actual embodied relationship. And so today I'm going to talk about the different types of love. And there are many. So I just want to say we could do 8 or 9 types of love. Yes, honestly, that many. But I'm not going to talk about all of those love types of love today. I'm going to talk about the ones that resonate with me and hopefully will resonate with you, and debunk some of the mystery around the types of love. And hopefully it'll cause you a lot less pain when you understand, okay, I get it. This is the kind of love that I'm experiencing. And I want you to see if you can really relate in your own terms. I'll share stories, and please feel free to ask questions, text questions at the end. I'm going to be very happy to answer. So, and I also just want to say this is a very short, brief video, and there's only so much we can do in 10 minutes. So please bear this in mind, and yeah, let's take it from here. So I want to start with my favorite kind of love called unconditional love, or agape. And agape, I want to bring this forward. Agape, here we go, here we go. Agape, universal love, oneness, unconditional love. Okay, I'll hold it up again in case you didn't catch it the first time. I'm going to share an experience with you about this kind of love. I was living in Los Angeles, and I was helping get some meditation events going for my meditation school. And I'd moved there and I didn't really know very many people. And, you know, it can be very lonely in a new place, in a new city, when you don't really know anyone. And so I was having a hard week where I was feeling a little bit disconnected. I was feeling a sort of separateness. And I thought, okay, I know, I'm going to go and dance. I'm going to go and do some 5 rhythms. I'm going to move my body. I'm going to get back into my breath, all the things that bring back connection into our lives. So I went and I danced, and there was a moment on the dance floor that my heart opened. I had this flaring and experienced this sort of oneness, this sense of being with all people, experiencing this sort of great sense of universality. It was just whoa. And the biggest thing was when I came out, I went into a Whole Foods store, and I remember seeing this plant and this baby and feeling completely merged with, like at one with. I was not separate anymore. I didn't feel separate. I felt merged in love with everything and everyone around me. And that's really, it's a kind of love that is when we unconditionally accept another person for who they are without agenda. We don't necessarily place conditions the way we do maybe as parents when our kids are growing up and say, if you don't do that, or I'm not going to love you. Unconditional love is a full acceptance of another person and how they are feeling and experiencing. And it's beautiful. And sometimes you can experience this kind of love, a sunset, or sunrise. I remember sitting on a beach in Malaysia one time, and there was nobody on this beach, just this beautiful, beautiful empty beach. And I had that moment, I had that sense of, wow, I am one with everything. I felt beautiful. It was amazing. So yeah, unconditional love, first one. Second one that you're probably really familiar with, and it's called, I'm going to get another card. It's called Eros. Eros. We all know Eros. Okay. Eros is falling in love. Here we go. Yay. Passionate, sexual. There's a flaring in our psyche. We feel deeply. We have one of those moments. Sometimes, actually, the type of moment that you might have is, wow, I've known this person before. There's a familiarity. We feel drawn. We feel pulled in. There's this flaring. It's like, oh, you know, and there is a strong sexual, passionate, sometimes intimate component. And we can become a little bit blinded by it. I mean, you've heard about Cupid's arrow. We can become a little bit blinded in the sense that we think that falling in love is everything. We think, wow, I've fallen in love with this person, therefore they must be great for me and amazing for me. And remember, the falling in love is a very personal thing. It's coming from us. And it's not always necessarily reciprocal. I want to say that sometimes it's really reciprocal and other times it's not. But in that flaring and that early falling in love phase, which by the way can last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, even a year, we can get really addicted to the high, to the feeling of that. And I've known people in relationships, clients and friends, be really, really addicted to the early phases, the flaring, the falling in love, because it feels so good. It's very delicious. It's yummy. And think this is it. I've met someone and I have a recent client had a series of what he calls falling in love moments. He'd meet someone, he'd fall in love, and he'd say, this is it, she's the one, she's the one, she's the one. And then about a month or two later, he'd say, oh, and there were all these pieces of the puzzle that didn't quite fit. So beware of Eros and Cupid's poison arrow. And at the same time, enjoy. Sometimes, of course, Eros turns into another form of love. And in fact, we do want to talk about the kind of love that Eros turns into. And I'm going to talk about Storge. Now, Storge, I'm just going to so you know how to spell it. Storge, Storge. It is a familial love. There's a sort of dependency, and it exists between family members. It's a very common kind of love that exists between family members, but it's also the kind of love in a relationship that when your relationship is growing, you feel like your partner becomes your best friend. You really do. You think, oh, beautiful, this is my best friend. I've started to you have Eros in the beginning, you fall in love. But if you're clever and if you've done the homework well, you've not let falling in love completely blind you to whether this person's going to be a great fit for you. And we'll talk a little bit about sexual polarity in a minute, the sort of being ruled just by your sexual energy. The thing about Storge is, born out of Eros is a beautiful Storge. There's this sense of brotherly love, like my best friend. And I know I have that with my partner, that we started with a mixture of all these beautiful loves. There was definitely a falling in love phase. But the Storge, the best friend, this part's really important because it's somebody you feel deeply bonded to. It's beautiful. And it's really important because it does make us feel safe. And we often feel quite held when we have this kind of love. We feel there's a certain dependency, and not necessarily dependency in a bad way, because sometimes we associate dependency with being a negative thing, like codependency. But bonding in a relationship is really, really key. It's really essential that we bond with another human being. We're wanting to attach, we're wanting to deepen our relationship when we go into committed relationship. Well, at least I do. I'm not sure about you. You can ask yourself that question. So I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to take a pause. So we had Storge. And I want to talk a little bit about sexual polarity and what that is and what that means, because a lot of times what happens with it's happened to me, first of all. I've had plenty of sexual polarity in my life where you meet somebody and you think, whoa, you've got this sort of draw. So let's talk a little bit about sexual polarity. There are poles. They exist inside of us, masculine and feminine. And many of us have both poles, and yet we tend to have an essence that's more aligned with one of the poles. So you can be a woman and have a masculine essence. You can be a woman and have a feminine essence, and vice versa. And when I talk about polarity, you know, you can have the polarity, the masculine, feminine within two female relationships, male relationships. There are the poles create this friction or tension. And actually, a very important factor of keeping the sex alive in a relationship is this masculine and feminine polarity. And so let's talk a little bit about the feminine. The feminine is life force. And I'm going to use an example of a country that has a lot of life force, Hawaii. It's abundant, it's full of life, it's luscious, it's alive. It has a flow, like a go with the flow kind of feeling. Unlike the masculine poled city that would be New York, it has directionality. There's this sense of going somewhere. This is the masculine pole, being led. If you're a feminine essence woman, you might really love to be led. You might love this masculine pole to lead you, to take you somewhere on an adventure. Or you may be maybe a masculine essence woman where you like to be the boss. Important. And there's no one is good and bad and right and wrong. So play with this. And there are times in your relationships that the poles will switch. In sexuality, the poles are going to switch. You're sometimes going to play the lead, the masculine, the dominant. And other times you're going to be in the submissive, the full surrender of the feminine, surrendering deeply to the male pole. And so, yeah. And why do I bring up polarity? Well, sometimes we have polarity when we meet someone. We have a strong sexual attraction. And for those of you who are familiar with the work of Alison Armstrong, she talks a lot about attraction for women, in specifically for women, and how it's really important not to have too strong a sexual attraction to your partner or to the person perhaps you're just meeting for the first time. She always says around 70% is good, but any more than that, we sort of lose our mind. And I believe this to be true. And I can speak from personal experience when I've had a really strong sexual charge with another person. I'm often resonating on the level of our wounds. And there's this big desire, deep desire. And it's not necessarily good because I lose a sense of myself, and I've lost a sense of myself a number of times in this capacity, and I would be the first one to admit that I've fallen down as a sense of, as in regards to this particular type of loving, where I've lost myself. I can't be myself fully when the sexual charge takes over. And so I want to tell you a little brief story. When I met my partner, Steve, fiance, soon to be husband, soon, next year, we had a beautiful spiritual connection immediately from our first phone conversation. And I remember thinking, wow, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And when I met him, I felt attracted to him. But the good thing was it wasn't led by the sexual charge. There was enough attraction, which was great. I was attracted. And at the same time, it wasn't so much so that I couldn't be my full self. And in fact, I was very fiery with him and I was my full self. And I felt like more than any other time in my life, of anyone that I've met, that I could be my full self. And of course, there was Eros. There was a little bit of falling in love, but it wasn't. There was also this sense of goodness in him. And in fact, I want to talk a little bit about goodness. This is my last form of love for today. It's called philia. Philia. And so philia is friendship founded on goodness. And the beautiful thing is that born out of Eros is philia. And it's companionship and trust. And so with Eros, when we have this sort of big, like falling in love, this flaring, we want to possess the other person. We're like, they're mine. And it's a little scary. Falling in love, we always say we lose our mind when we fall in love. But if the love develops past the falling in love phase and we get to a phase of love called philia, there's a deep understanding of one another. There's a goodness, and I definitely know I've experienced this in my current relationship. There is a sense of goodness and companionship and, you know, all these good stuff. So let me take another breath. Okay, so to recap, we've got unconditional love, agape, beautiful sense of oneness, merging, being with all things and all people, not necessarily even just in a love relationship. So the unconditional love, we can resonate with many different people when we feel unconditional love. And then we have something called storge, which is family love, like a familial love. And you know, you can have it just with your family. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a relationship, but it's great if from your Eros that the storge comes out of that. And so the Eros, as we talked about, is the falling in love by losing my mind. the Cupid's arrow, the sexual passionate phase where there's a flaring. And it's really key, and I'm going to talk about this later this week when we talk a little bit about love and boundaries, that you don't completely lose your mind in this phase. I mean, I'm hoping that if you've got a good head on your shoulders, you've really had a bit of, if you're a single woman and you've thought long and hard about the kind of partner that you're looking for, so that the falling in love part isn't just a whim, it doesn't just come and go. And I'm sure many of you experience that type of falling in love that just begins and then is done very, very quickly. So the pitfalls of falling in love. And okay, so we've talked about lots of types of love here today, and I want to ask you a few questions. I want to throw questions to you. I want to know, how are you loving? I want to hear about your love. And I also want to know, how would you like to bring more love into your life, and what kinds of love? I mean, we talked about sexual polarity today. Perhaps you could ramp that one up. Perhaps you could play with that one in your relationship life if you're a couple and you've been together a long time. Or if you're single, what kind of love are you looking for? What do you want? Yeah, I'd love to hear more. So this is the beginning of the love series. I'm going to talk at least 4 times this week. And I will be giving a half-day workshop in Berkeley on October the 9th, and we'll dive much, much deeper into love in that. And later, watch this space, I'll be starting my own YouTube channel, and so we'll be dealing with a lot more aspects of love. Okay, so signing off for now, this is Tracy Stanton. Thanks, everybody.